I punch the gas and it feels like the family hauler's dragging a trailer full of bricks, right? Give the next 8 minutes and watch that same SUV yank shoulders like it just rolled off the showroom floor. No lift, no $1,000 shop bill, only a few driveway tools and one quick parts store run. Every tip we prepared is ripped straight from dealership tech notebooks, backed by lab data, then translated into plain English, Saturday morning steps anyone can pull off. The first move alone unlocks fresh horsepower. Stick around for number 5, and even the neighbor's sports sedan won't know what hit it. Tip number 1, replace your stock air filter. Pop the hood and meet the unsung gatekeeper of horsepower, the rectangular pleated panel hiding in a plastic box near the fender. That humble engine air filter is your SUV's set of lungs, and when it's caked with dirt, it chokes performance in the same way sprinting with a surgical mask would slow a sprinter. Engineers at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, working for the U.S. Department of Energy, proved the point by timing modern fuel-injected vehicles with clean versus clogged filters. Average 0 to 60 runs dropped by 6 to 11% once fresh media was in place, even though fuel economy barely changed. Locating the filter takes longer to describe than to do. Look for the black plastic lid held by 2 metal clips, or, on some models, 4 Phillips screws. Pop those fasteners and the whole cover lifts away like a lunchbox lid, revealing an accordion of paper pleats the color of a storm cloud. Hold it up to sunlight. If no rays peek through, the engine has been pulling air through something resembling a dirty dish sponge. Dust, road grit, and even microscopic pollen have packed every fold, forcing the throttle body to gulp harder just to maintain idle. Modern electronic throttles will compensate, but at full pedal travel, that backup plan runs out of headroom, robbing the power band just when you need it for an on-ramp or a trailer pull. Replacement is almost laughably cheap and entirely DIY friendly. A quality O E-grade filter for most crossovers and body-on-frame SUVs runs $15 to $20 online or at any parts counter. Instead of slotting in another disposable paper element, leap straight to a sports air filter. High-flow cotton gauze or multi-layer foam designs move up to 50% more air than OEM paper, while still trapping particles smaller than a grain of flour. Many are washable and reusable for 100,000 miles, which means the one-time cost, about $40 to $60, quickly undercuts the stack of throwaways they replace. A quick VIN search on any major parts site locates the exact dimensions in seconds, and installation stays as DIY-friendly as the stock piece. Gloves on, lid open, old filter out. Expect a sprinkle of sand and leaf crumbs, proof the box has been catching everything the front tires fling up. Give the lower housing a 30-second sweep with a vacuum or damp microfiber so stray debris can't warp the new filter's rubber gasket. The sports element nests right where the factory unit sat. Align the pleats toward the snorkel, press the perimeter even, and wiggle the cover while snapping the clips to verify a uniform seal. No special tools, no calibration, just more airflow on demand. The reward shows up the moment the key turns. A sharper bark from the intake accompanies a livelier torque needle, and the vehicle's nose lifts with new eagerness. Run a 0 to 60 test with any stopwatch app before and after. Lopping off close to a full second isn't uncommon and mirrors the DOE findings. Gains of that scale usually demand hundreds in exhaust or ECU work, yet here they arrive for the cost of dinner and in less time than it takes to cook it. Keep those gloves handy. The real magic is about to stack on top of this sports filter upgrade. Tip number 2, clean throttle body and MAF sensor. If your throttle response hesitates, your rough idle comes and goes, and your fuel mileage drops naggingly, it's likely due to a throttle body glazed with carbon and a mass airflow sensor coated in microscopic oil mist. Every burst of acceleration depends on those two components working in perfect harmony: the throttle plate controlling the gulp of air, the MAF sensor measuring exactly how much oxygen just rushed in. When either surface collects residue, the computer receives fuzzy information and delivers fuzzy performance in return. One SAE study on modern V6 engines recorded a 3 to 5 horsepower gain and a 2% bump in fuel economy the moment those parts were cleaned. That is low-hanging fruit no SUV owner should ignore. The task begins with nothing more exotic than a can of dedicated throttle body cleaner, a matching can of MAF sensor cleaner, a flathead or 8mm socket for the intake clamp, and 2 microfiber towels. Let the engine cool, pop the hood, and locate the black accordion hose that runs from the airbox to the intake manifold. Loosen that single clamp and peel the hose free. The throttle body now stares back, a circular throat sealed by a butterfly valve, its edges often rimmed and varnished the color of strong coffee. Do not jam the butterfly open with metal tools. The motorized actuator gears are delicate. Instead, key the ignition on, engine off, so the electronic throttle cycles. Or gently press the plate with a gloved fingertip. A short burst of throttle body cleaner instantly liquefies the baked-on film. Let the solvent drip for 10 seconds, then wipe the perimeter with the towel, following the curve so no lint snags in the shaft. 2 or 3 more sprays, another gentle wipe, and bright aluminum peeks through. Any stubborn patch vanishes if the cleaner is allowed to soak for a half minute before the final swipe. Now it's time to clean the MAF sensor. It usually lives a few inches upstream of the throttle body, secured by 2 T20 screws or clips. Once free, it reveals a plastic housing with fragile wires suspended inside like harp strings. Resist every urge to touch them. Even the softest towel can snap a filament thinner than a strand of hair. Aim the dedicated MAF sensor cleaner from 4 inches away and deliver a series of quick pulses, rotating the housing to wet every angle. The chemical leaves zero residue and evaporates in minutes, so the sensor can be reinstalled almost as soon as overspray stops dripping. Slide the MAF back into its bore, align the arrow in the direction of airflow, click the connector into place, and snug the screws fingertip tight. Over torque cracks the plastic flange. Reattach the intake hose, verify that every clamp is seated, and clear any trouble codes with a basic OBD2 scanner if one is handy. The engine might flare slightly on the first start as the computer adjusts to a rush of clean air, but within 30 seconds, the idle settles like new. It's time for the payoff. On the initial test drive, the throttle pedal will feel lighter, as if the SUV had lost weight overnight. Congrats, you've done one of the best fixes in less than an hour. Most drivers notice an immediate 1 to 2 mile per gallon improvement on the very next fill-up, thanks to the restored accuracy of the MAF readings. This makes this quick fix one of the highest return on effort projects in basic maintenance. Tip number 3, reset ECU and transmission. Adaptive learning modern engines and their companion automatics run on long-term memories called adaptive trims. Every throttle press, every gear change, every ounce of extra dust the intake once swallowed, each detail gets recorded so the computer can fine-tune fuel, spark, and hydraulic line pressure. After freeing up airflow by installing a sports filter and scrubbing the throttle body, that old memory suddenly becomes bad information. The engine control unit still thinks air is scarce and carbon is clogging the plate. The transmission control module still expects slow, cushioned shifts that hide a lazy power band. Clearing those outdated habits is like handing the drivetrain a blank notebook and saying, "Start fresh with the new lungs." The simplest reset method needs nothing more than a 10mm wrench. With the key out, disconnect the negative battery terminal and isolate the cable so it cannot snap back. 10 full minutes drains the keep-alive capacitor inside most ECUs. The adaptive tables disappear as voltage trickles to zero. While the clock resets and the radio forgets its presets, the engine forgets 100,000 miles of compensations that no longer apply. Anyone wary of losing infotainment settings can skip the wrench and reach for an entry-level OBD2 scanner. Almost every handheld unit under $70 includes a clear cam or reset fuel trims command that wipes the same memory without touching the battery. Transmissions built in the last decade have their own adaptive logic, tracking clutch wear and throttle rate to sharpen or soften each upshift. Those maps remain even after the engine starts breathing easier, creating a mismatch. The throttle plate now swings wide open with less pedal, yet the transmission delays line pressure because it expects sluggish airflow. A full adaptive reset reunites the two systems, eliminating the mushy pause that sometimes creeps in between second and third gear on a freshly serviced vehicle. The moment the cable reconnects or the scanner finishes its routine, the drivetrain reboots to factory defaults. A quick ritual helps the computer relearn accurate baselines. Let the engine idle for 3 minutes with accessories off so the ECU sees a stable vacuum and airflow at warm temps. Switch on the air conditioning for another minute to teach idle control how to handle extra load. Roll onto a quiet road, accelerate gently to 50 miles per hour, and then coast back to 20 without brakes. The wide-open throttle and closed throttle sections give the ECU full data points on both ends of the spectrum. Repeat the exercise 2 or 3 times, gradually increasing throttle angle, and finish with a few moderate stops so the transmission relearns downshift timing. The entire process takes 15 miles and locks in new fuel and shift curves. Results show up before the first turnaround. Throttle tip-in feels crisper because fuel no longer waits for outdated airflow calculations. Shifts snap into place with a renewed firmness that was softened over years of compensatory learning. Independent dyno shops routinely measure 3 to 5 horsepower gains after an adaptive reset on engines that recently received fresh filters and clean sensors. Not because magic power appears, but because the computer finally stops subtracting the power that was always there. Fuel economy often climbs 2 to 3% in the following tank as the closed-loop fuel trims align with actual oxygen flow instead of yesterday's restrictions. With the drivetrain's brain cleared and retrained, mechanical and electronic systems are officially speaking the same language. Tip number 4, replace wheels and shock absorbers. If damping fails, every bump sends the chassis into a slow-motion pogo that loses traction and adds yards to stopping distance. Laboratory research in vehicle engineering journals prove that worn dampers increase ABS braking distance on bumpy terrain by several feet and reduce steering accuracy when drivers need it most. A single weary shock may extend a panic stop by around 6 feet or half the length of an SUV's hood. Although the ride bounces slowly, the wheels are also trying to keep traction, yet they may be the issue. Budget alloys and factory steel rims can weigh 28 pounds. Every extra pound hanging below the springs is unsprung mass, which the engine must accelerate as weight and the brakes must control as rotational inertia. 18-pound carbon fiber wheels cut 4/10 off 0 to 60, 6 feet from 70 to 0, and 1/10 of a lateral G on the skid pad in a Mustang GT 350 engineers and racers call unsprung mass enemy number 1 because eliminating it speeds up suspension response and keeps tires gripped to rough pavement. The remedy includes new dampers and lighter wheels and tires. Check the shocks for oil leak around the shaft. Even a mist indicates a blown internal seal. Next, press a bumper corner hard and release to execute the driveway bounce test. A healthy chassis rises once and settles. A fatigued one oscillates twice or 3 times before resting. DIYers were intimidated by replacing struts, but pre-assembled quick struts reduce the labor to a few bolts per corner. Each $100 monotube gas pressurized device bolts in under an hour and restores original damping curves and adds performance stiffness. If the struts are off, reduce rotational weight. Flow-formed aluminum wheels are 5 to 7 pounds lighter than OEM cast wheels, but much cheaper than forged specialty alloys. The engine feels relief instantly when 5 pounds are cut from a wheel, which reduces suspension speed by 10 pounds. The upgraded shocks stabilize the tires so ABS and traction control can perform better. Accelerating from 20 to 60 miles per hour needs less power, and braking from 70 to 0 feels like gripping a harder pedal. First test drive following upgrading is generally enlightening. Potholes that formerly shook the steering wheel now seem like muffled thumps, followed by immediate calm. Slaloming between lane markers requires minimal steering adjustment since the body stays level and the tires produce crisp input through the wheel. Rolling into the throttle on a flat stretch increases throttle response since the drivetrain spins less inertia. When traffic stops ahead, a strong pedal places the nose with reassurance and cuts the expensive additional feet the worn shocks had been adding to every stop. Replacing wheels and shocks is expensive, but the decreased rolling resistance of current performance tires on lighter rims improves stability, safety, acceleration, braking, and fuel efficiency. Those increases in the airflow and adaptive learning tweaks beneath the hood, the SUV feels poised, confident, and ready for the next miles. Tip number 5, clean your injectors. Fuel injectors that once misted fuel into a perfect cone eventually gum up, turning that spray into a lazy dribble. Give them a reboot with a bottle containing polyether amine PEA on the label. Pour it into a half tank, merge onto the highway, and hold 3,500 RPM for a few 10-second bursts. The classic Italian tune-up. Heat plus PEA scrubs varnish off the panels, and by the end of that tank, most SUVs idle smoother, start quicker, and gain 2 or 3 bonus MPG. Now clear the bottleneck that feeds those injectors. An external frame rail fuel filter should be swapped every 30 to 40k miles. Clogging steals pressure, overworks the pump, and leaves you flat when it's time to pass. Pull the fuel pump fuse, crank the engine to bleed pressure, crack the downstream flare first, and note the flow arrow on the new canister before tightening the fittings. 2 key-on, key-off cycles prime the system. Fire it up and enjoy rock-steady fuel delivery. Clean injectors plus a fresh filter let every cubic foot of air from our earlier tricks mix with the right splash of fuel. Pure, instant torque. Notice the difference? Share your MPG or 0 to 60 gains in the comments. Hit like if this tip saved your day, and subscribe for the next driveway performance hack.